Thank you, Mr. Obehi. It's a pleasure to be. Yeah, my name is Dr. Ikechi, and these days I choose to introduce myself first of all as an economist and sometimes as a marketing specialist.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started into this episode.
Been discussing all the time on how to drive transformation in Africa from the European community, and some of the European countries as well are trying to come back to Africa and they reconcile with them because of some of the things that happened in the past year.
All
Of
right,
course,
we're waiting for that reconciliation. That's going to be very interesting.
yeah, but that is the truth.
Mhm.
This is very correct. So yeah, but that's not the topic of the day. So I wouldn't want to go into that today.
All
So
right.
yeah, and I am the pioneer. Um, or will I call it originator or pioneer person who conceptualized the brain re-engineering concept and reimagination, and which is a strategy for the youth engagement in the agriculture sector, and that actually talks about um, changing the perception problem, changing the mentality problem of youngsters and youths, because most of them they have um, the wrong ideologies, perception, dogmas, and some some of their some of those imaginations used to be right before, but in this era of the fourth industrial revolution and the advent of technology, it's no longer business as usual. So there is a paradigm shift which led to my, which provoked me to think deeper during the COVID, period. I was in a session with the founder of Foodlog in the Netherlands, and we were in a session, and as he was interviewing me in that session, I suddenly mentioned about re-engineering, and he paused and asked me uh, further questions. And since that day, I had to think back, and I just knew that this is the concept that needs to be heard in the nations of the world. And one beautiful thing about the concept is that no aspect of the concept is dull. Every aspect of the concept aligns with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals agenda.
Of the SDG. All right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Ikechi. Of course, we have had a number of conversation. Thank you for having shared with me, and even before the interview, that project you are working on the brain reimagining, re-engineering is a fantastic project. Of course, we're going to have an entire episode on it, a series of episodes on it, because I find it to be very interesting. We will have time to be able to explore it and talk about it and see how it can benefit the people. And of course, today we are looking at the fourth industrial revolution as it relates to cassava production and distribution, and of course, in Africa, and in this case, in specific case, the Nigeria situation. Now, because you grew up in Nigeria, you know the Nigeria market very well, and of course, you know the population also, the demography. I don't know if you want to share with us some statistics relating to cassava in Nigeria? Because that is where we're going to be spending much of our time today. Please help me with that.
Oh, wow, cassava is an interesting crop, and it belongs to this to the crops subsector because we have four subsectors, major subsectors in the agriculture sector. We have the crops, livestock, forestry, and fishery, and each of the subsectors has their own percentage contribution um, to the entire agriculture sector GDP contribution to yeah to a nation's economy. And the cassava is a root crop, very interesting crop. And over time, the countries around the equator has prospered from that crop. And just last week, I was preaching about cassava to some South Africans who, um, you know, tried, saw what I have done on cassava, and they wanted me to, they wanted to, to hear from me because the government of South Africa has just started to trying to fund cassava projects because originally cassava, um, like I said, does much better in the equatorial area. So cassava, the botanical name of cassava, from secondary school, I picked it up very strongly because, like I used to say, that cassava is. I started to cultivate cassava as a child before I became an agricultural um, expert. Before I became an agriculture expert, I had already become a farmer, and I became a farmer before I became a teenager. Yes, and so Manihot specific name is Esculenta, and that variety is known sometimes as Manioc or Yucca, and it is very drought tolerant, and of course it it absorbs a lot of shock. So, and like history will tell us that it originates from this place or that place, and it originates from around South America and possibly, um, yeah, from some regions around Brazil. Yeah, anyway, that's the story for another day. But like I said, that cassava has really prospered. And you were mentioning about statistics with respect to cassava. I just recalled now when you touched on your questions on cassava. Um, Nigeria, like I said, that cassava is very important, and it it's a starchy crop. It's a starchy root, and of course a major source of dietary energy for more than 500 million persons, and is known as the highest producer of carbohydrate amongst staple crops. And interestingly, amongst the three most populous crops in Africa, cassava ranks the highest. So it's really, really, a commodity that, um, a crop that is quite valuable, is highly valuable, and it has promising potentials to create more food value chains, and especially in this era of fourth industrial revolution now. Yeah, so um, coming back again to your question about the issue of the statistics, yeah, it has surely from statistics is all over the place that the Nigerian cassava market has expanded, markedly around 2021 after COVID, with an increase of 14% against the previous year. And of course, in general, the consumption, however, has recorded a relatively flat trend pattern. Yeah. So, and Yeah, and the pace of growth was the most pronounced in 2014, with an increase of about 147% against the previous year. And as a result, production reached the peak level of very good dollars from 2015 to 2021. The production rate failed to regain momentum. Yeah, so the average yield of cassava in Nigeria amounted to some tons, some significant tons per hectare in 2021, and that has remained stable against 2020. Yeah, and yeah, we have challenges. I tell you, we have challenges with growing of cassava. Lots of cassava farmers have approached me, um, like I met some of them during a session where I facilitated the home business school. Some of my students grow cassava, so they keep asking me. In fact, there was a heated up session where, um, after I facilitated, for them, so they took me up and they said, "Please, can we do something about cassava? That the wastage is so enormous." And they were like, "How can we, correct this about cassava because it has very promising opportunities. It has very promising opportunities to, change a lot of things in our country." So, and we began to look at that and look at that, and yeah, so it's um, it's really amazing that people like the cassava farmers who have been waiting for a season like this when the production, especially in Nigeria, has, increased from 9.57 million tons uh, about 50 years ago to 63 million tons in 2021, growing at an average rate of 4.28%. So I think it's a very good thing. And like I told you last week, I was discussing with FABCO. FABCO is one of the frontline bodies in South Africa who have taken it very seriously to look into cassava issues. So I am also discussing with them. And I am happy also that these frontline organizations in South Africa, like the NAMC, the National Association of Agricultural Marketing Council, is also on top of the game, and the Agricultural Research Council as well. And so they are trying to, um, they have finished preparing the proposal for the government of South Africa because they are now interested in building up this.
I want to say thank you very much for that response. It sort of cleared the air of what cassava is and in the Nigerian market. Actually, what I was thinking about when you were responding to that question was trying to understand why, among all the different crops that could be cultivated in tropical climate, of course, because now if we take a look at the tropical climate, not only in Africa or in Nigeria, we go to South America, but even in Asia country, we see that cassava do very well in these places. So I'm trying to understand what made cassava really this special type of crop for the Nigerian diet and the Nigerian market, to be specific.
Like I said, cassava is very rich in carbohydrates, um, and rich in starch. So, and it has a lot of historical um, aspects. It has a lot of historical aspects. Yeah, and we must look at the products that come from cassava because the products that come from cassava alone is what makes it to be quite you know prolific. Let me use that word. And yeah, it's true that in Nigeria, cassava production is well developed, compared to a lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa as an organized crop. Yeah, and yes, it is established as a multiplication and processing. It multiplies very well. Like remember I had mentioned that when cassava grows, it doesn't really have you know uh, those challenges of environment and all that. It actually tolerates some of those vicissitudes or challenges, the things that hinder it from growth. Um, so people believe that cassava is indigenous to Nigeria, and but historically, they mentioned that it came from South America. So when we look at Gary, one of the major products of cassava, hardly will you find households that don't consume Gary. And even in China right now, China produces Gary because of that, I'm telling you. Because, of course, Nigeria is a giant of Africa, and cassava is highly valuable crop. And not just Gary. What of the one we call apple, the fufu? What of tapioca? Even what we call tapioca is not really tapioca. Like experts in food science and technology they have told us that tapioca is actually looks like Quaker oats, the original tapioca, because it emanates from or it emanated from Benin Republic, and it's made in such a way that it's a ready meal for the young persons who wake up in the morning to prepare for school, or even the elderly, and so they can actually have just a mix of it with milk and sugar, and then sometimes depend on the nutrient requirements or dietary requirements, and then they would you know be careful to add it any or to complement it with any sugar or milk or any other thing that they wish to add to it to make it more appealing and comfortable for a diet. So yeah, so we have a lot of products. We have even primary products, secondary, tertiary products, cassava, and this is why Nigeria is so blessed. And when you look at, because it's a starchy crop, because it's a carbohydrate crop, it's normally eaten with vegetables, and the the vegetable that can be complemented with cassava derivative is what we call soup today, because there are different types of soup, and we always use um, that cassava derivative, which has undergone processing to now and consume it. So remember that as an economist, I have to look at the cost and returns, and to analyze the cost and return aspects. I also have to look at the the value chains of those derivatives, because there are many value chains. And recently, while we were in a session, I was in deep thinking because most times when I'm lost in thoughts, when I'm lost in brainstorming um, in sessions, I think deep, and suddenly something just came within me. And you know what just dropped in me about technology? It says technology is the driver of creation of more value chains, and cassava is a major crop which has diverse value chains. And only technology can unlock more products from cassava because there's still more products that will emanate from cassava tomorrow. At the moment, we have over 20 derivatives. And a friend of mine who lives in Las Vegas, some years back, we had been discussing on how his projects in Edo State, would thrive and also stand the test of time. He asked me a lot of questions about setting up that cassava farm, and then he wanted something very different, very spectacular from what other persons have done. And I know I was telling him, if you have the money, then set it up, and then we have to look for people who can drive this vision because it's not an easy one. Yeah, looking at uh, the products, because nothing should really be lost from cassava. The Sierra Leoneans, they eat cassava leaf, they use it in preparing soup. I never knew that, but it was later on while I was, because this work that we do in the diaspora also exposes me to get to learn about cultures and get to, you know, uh, acculturate and also share knowledge across board. And I began to see indeed that the agriculture sector in Africa needs serious attention right now. As I speak, the leaders of our nations need to wake up from sleep. Take agriculture seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much. It is something that we're particularly interested in. Of course, I would follow most of the conversation that we have done here relating to food sustainability because when we are talking about independence, we need to be independent in everything, beginning from who we are, what we eat, what we wear, and how we present ourselves in the world. And one of these things is food production. We have a lot of resources that is available to us. It just depends on what do we do with these things. I was interviewing a woman the other day who was talking to me about pig rearing, and she was making an example of how she used to rear pigs in Benin, but now she is in the US. She was saying that in Nigeria we only rear pigs and eat pig meat, swine. But swine can be made into several varieties of products. There are a lot of derivatives coming out from swine. It's not only just to kill and eat. Now, what does it even mean to develop these different varieties? It means creating job for the people. Because we're going to use cream at the end of the day to rub on our body. We're going to eat biscuits. We are going to use even toothpicks. We are going to put pomade and the rest of it. All these are agricultural products. We cannot import all of them. And of course, food. And we're going to have to eat food in different ways. It's not just the pounded yam and the gari. We can transform it in very many ways. So this is where it becomes very interesting. I'm beginning to even understand that you can even create ethanol, create petrochemicals from these products. Whereas we only look at it as poor man material. It is not poor man material. Agriculture is the sustenance of the human being. So we must look for a way to make sure that it becomes the driver of our economy. That is why I find it very interesting. That is why I love so much what you are doing, sensitizing the people about the importance of agriculture.
Thank you. And I didn't even mention about, in the face of Russia-Ukraine crisis, how we have been, um, facing a lot of, our farmers and people, institutions. Yeah, of course, wheat. Wheat is very important, but we have a substitute in cassava as well, because cassava can be used in making of breads. It's used in the confectionery, used in the bakery industry, and many of such companies that use cassava. And is increasingly getting more important as the days go by. So, and we had seen that cassava is largely consumed in many processed forms in sub-Saharan Africa, especially in Nigeria. And of course, it's used in the industry, and the livestock feed is well known. But it's gradually increasing, especially as import substitution becomes more prominent in the industrial sector in the economy of the economy here. So it's really an aberration that a country that is able, and let's not allow what happened to us in oil palm happen to us in cassava. We allowed ourselves to, this glory of Africa to slip off our hands. When your glory is stripped off, what happens to you? You becomes Ichabod. The person becomes Ichabod. Like the scripture tells us, we lose out when the glory has departed. Then what will happen to lives who are tied down in the face of poverty, in the face of developmental issues, in the face of food insecurity, in the face of no jobs, unemployment? And then we are having a crop that can create jobs. Have we thought about that? And that's the whole idea of the concept I came up with, because I was looking for a solution and not just to be within the four walls of a university answering a professor, writing and publishing papers without doing something spectacular. And now when we are there driving the passion, some persons do not even understand the type of vision we are carrying. Trying to take, we are not doing it. We are not looking at one community. We are looking at nations. And we are not doing it for ourselves alone. We are not selfish. We are not doing it because we want to be heard or want to, be one of the charlatans who have existed. And of course, one day everyone will retire and go back to where he comes from. So why can't we now become a voice for our generation? Why can't we arise? And that's why what we keep pioneering even at the youth diaspora organization. And I really want to give my kudos to some of the diaspora African groups in the Caribbean as well, and in the US and all over the world. Africans are trying to come back to Africa, and I have seen them very intentional people coming back to Africa. While some Africans are leaving Africa, some Africans in diaspora are returning back to Africa. What does that tell you? That is to tell you that there is, when another man's meat can be another man's poison. But let me tell you something, that Africa is not just a nation to treat with levity. Africa is the future.
Before we move into the meat of the conversation, which is the fourth industrial revolution and agricultural production, I just want to clear a curiosity. I want to ask you to help me with that. Can you tell me anything about agricultural research relating to cassava production in Nigeria? Because we understand, you and I understand that in Nigeria, cassava is highly important for us. And somehow the Nigerian government is interested in it because if you want to feed your population, you must look for a way to improve on your agriculture. Even though in many occasions we have inconsistency on the part of the government and not enough respondents in terms of helping the people to realize or give them the incentive to be able to produce agricultural product, there are things that is going on. So I want you to tell me if there is anything we can know about the research relating to high input of agriculture or how to better produce cassava in Nigeria. Share anything with me that you know.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, because research is also part of what I do. You will, if you put my name on Google, you will see I've done a lot on cassava research. Is my student, in fact, one of my students, when he came to me, he was, he was really an exceptional student because he graduated with first class, and he was the best student in the department and also in the faculty. When he came to me while before his graduation, he was asking me to give him a topic, and I told him, "No, I don't do that. Can you just go and think and come back to me and tell me what you are really interested in doing? I mean, for the 5 or 6 years you have spent in this university, you should be able to have brainstormed on what you will do in your final year." And I discovered that he had some interest in cassava, and I helped him out. I saw that he had that seed, and I also saw that zeal in him. I saw that passion because I mentor a lot of them. Even those of them are not even my students. They always come to me because they believe that I will help them in one way or the other. And he did a study on some some products. So he looked at some specific derivatives of cassava, and he did a nice job. And yeah, and it was basically on marketing of some of those derivatives. And also he looked at, of course, most times when you carry out researches, you have to look at the socioeconomics, and the socioeconomics touches on trying to know the age, the sex, the household size, the income level, and all of that. Like the sometimes it is called social social demographics, or sometimes you just leave it at demographic information about the key players in the sector. So that is also an aspect of research. And then talking about the cost and returns to know whether that business, that agribusiness, cassava agribusiness, is profitable or not profitable. That is to know whether it's lucrative enough. And then after that, of course, you can look at it from whether it's profitable enough, because costs has to do with how much was invested in producing. So you look at the inputs, like of course the cassava contains the manure or fertilizer, all of those aspects, the land also. Of course, we have the variable cost and we have the constant cost as well. And then you have to really extrapolate those cost items, and then now begin to um, know the returns. And of course, for the marketer is the key player in the marketing of cassava research. And then how much was used in transporting all those transaction cost issues within the what do you call it again, in the distributive channel. And then as it's being done, you can as well do more and maybe look at, um, of course, the margins are as well, the margins of the different key players, because in the channel of distribution, you have the farmer or the producer, then you have the wholesaler, and then you have the retailer, and in a regular distributive channel, but sometimes it doesn't look so regular as such. Sometimes we have commission men who come in to perform some brokering activities. So the researcher must also factor in this and also be able to discover new things in the market, because that is also part of the what we are trained to do. When you are carrying out a study, for someone who really did the study and not someone who went and copied what other people did, this is very frowned. It's known as plagiarism in research, and we ask them to go and have a hands-on experience in the field, and not just staying back at home and duplicating with the internet and doing all that. So that is, of course, that is not acceptable. We must, take, take it to the next level. We, even if it means training enumerators or research assistants to help out in going out to the research. So we have different aspects of marketing research. Like we can even look at structure, conduct, and performance of the market. That is the SCP model. And yeah, sometimes it's not, you may not follow it in that dimension, but structure of the market is very important. And we saw it when the federal government of Nigeria placed the ban on importation of rice. And I had even, we had looked at how the market will be when there's no, when some persons in the country who grow it will become more powerful than the other. So what will happen in that type of structure of the market? So we need to know this aspect. We need to know how to carry out these studies, and we need to know which analytical tool, which methodology to use in carrying out this, and then coming back again to analyze the results, and then making recommendations, drawing recommendations for policy. And after that, now the government comes in. How do we now send out? How do we now disseminate the information, the innovation, the new ideas, what we have, the findings from research? So that is what an educational academic institution should do. And that is the whole idea why we are having the International Conference of Business Models in Agriculture in Kigali in March. And that is the whole idea, I'm telling you, because we need to change our attitude. We need to change a lot of things and tell ourselves the truth if we must actually transform.
Thank you for that. That is important. It is fundamental. All right, now let's touch one leg on it. The fourth industrial revolution and cassava. But first of all, let's even try to understand what do we mean, or what are we supposed to understand by the term the fourth industrial revolution in terms of agriculture. Help us understand that.
Thank you very much. Fourth Industrial Revolution and agriculture works together. In fact, it was also during COVID. A lot of things happened during COVID. To be sincere with you, I wasn't very much ethical. I wasn't much interested on the fourth industrial revolution thing, but I got an invitation from South Africa to talk about fourth industrial revolution, and I saw it aligned with technology. And I said, okay, since I instruct technology in agriculture and computer applications in agriculture for master students, for postgraduate students in my university. I said, okay, let me just do this research and then try to see if I will learn something from it. And that was where I started to fly with it. And my friends in the Dodge, they were very much they saw the things I was doing in the fourth industrial revolution, how I share knowledge and how I speak with passion across board, and telling them that fourth industrial revolution can actually work, and it can actually help agriculture. Now, coming to the aspect of fourth industrial revolution. Now, like we have been having, um, you know, industrial revolutions, unlocking from the first industrial revolution. We've really had it from first, second, third. We've also had it in the third. Yeah, so we've had this industrial revolution unlocking in one way or the other, but we have not had it like this as in the fourth industrial revolution. So, industrial revolution talks about transition to new manufacturing processes which happened in time past. So, we saw the advancement, the three advancements in the steam engine. We also had the age of science and mass production, and also the rise in digital technology. So the world around is evolving, changing fundamentally. And now, what is the industrial revolution that we are talking about and why? The industrial revolution was a transition from creating goods by hand, by using machines. Of course, it starts and are widely debated by scholars, but the period generally spanned from about in the 18th century. Yeah. Anyway, now coming back to the fourth industrial revolution, and because the fourth industrial revolution works on digitized technology, digitized economy, digitizing systems. And now, what do I mean by digitized system? What does fourth industrial revolution, what drives it? It's all about cyber systems. Cyber systems. And then how does it play out in agriculture? How does it play out in agriculture? It's very important for us to begin to see the aspects of fourth industrial revolution and how it can be used in transforming the agriculture sector. Now we have what we call Internet of Things. We have cobots. We have, artificial intelligence, AIs. We have augmented reality, virtual reality, and we have the big data. We have the blockchain technology. We have agricultural drones. So we need to now start placing them. How are they helping out to transform the crops subsector? How are they helping out to transform the livestock, the forestry, and the fishery? And I have seen recently what actually drove me to AgriV. AgriV is a technology, an agtech company, a major agtech company. There are many agtech companies I'm connected to, but AgriV fascinated me because they work for very large firms. The way those companies actually work. They work in such a way that they have packages for maybe huge companies or even institutions. So they have a package for the academia. So and I had even come across them, I discussed with them. I had already read about them, and I built capacity with my students on some of their solutions and some of the other agricultural technology companies. And then before I now came across them in one of the speaking engagements I had in London, and I met with one of the contacts of Agrivi. And after he listened to me, he came and said, "I have to get your contact." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you speak like somebody um, that I want to introduce you to." And he now asked me if I've heard of Agrivi, because I used to call it Agrivi. So he said Agrivi, and he said, "Oh, really? I've heard of Agrivi. Yeah, I've thought about, I know." So he now connected me to one of the Agrivi experts who actually does a lot of work in Africa. And funny enough, she's my wife's namesake. Yeah, from Croatia. And yeah, so fourth industrial revolution in agriculture is very important. Its conceptual, its concept combines, I mentioned artificial intelligence, big data, now have achieved significant attention and popularity in precision farming, because we need to talk about precision farming and then smart farming and all of that. Light monitoring, diagnosing insect pests. How are they? Knowing the type of soil, the nutrients in the soil, and then saying, okay, let's plant our crop. This is fit to be, this crop is fit to be planted here. Let's give this soil some time to buy back. And then measuring of soil moisture is very important. All of these can do. Even diagnosing harvest time, you can use, to know, also to monitor crop health and also reduce the complications in the soil. The surge in digital technologies, you know, is what we call fourth industrial revolution, because that is the digital technology in agriculture. Fourth industrial revolution in agriculture is digital technology in agriculture, using it to change the game in agriculture, using it to make systems more productive, more profitable, more efficient, and more sustainable. That's the whole idea of the fourth industrial revolution. The challenge is to ensure that revolution works for everyone. The revolution works for the farmers, and the revolution is working. That is the game changer. And in developed countries, we have food in season and out of season. In developed countries, we have enough fruits to chew, juicy fruits to help our health. Move on, drive on. We have vegetables because, of course, we need to, consume these vegetables, green leafy vegetables, year in, year out. What about the vertical farm initiatives? They are all part of the fourth industrial revolution. What of nanotechnology, biotechnology? What of hydroponics, aeroponics, aquaponics? All these emanate from fourth. So the challenge is to ensure that revolution works for everyone, especially our smallholder farmers. Who are the major players? Who are the major farmers? Who are the major categories of farmers in Africa? Every intervention for the agricultural sector must first of all trickle down to them. So it is highly necessary that fourth industrial revolution is enforced. The knowledge of first industrial revolution is enforced. We need to start with knowledge. We need to start with knowledge, yes. Start building up. When I was, a diaspora expert at the facility, in Edo State, Nigeria, which was spearheaded by the IOM of the United Nations and the Federal Ministry of Agriculture of my country, and also the Federal Department of Agriculture. I noticed that the staff of the facilities, they didn't really understand what the fourth industrial revolution was all about. They are still contacting me after that, because the way I took them, these are people who have been in the facility for over 30 years, about 40 years, I'm telling you. And these are graduates of, the whole idea of the facility was for it to metamorphose to a Federal College of Agriculture where they will train a lot of experts, people who are passionate about agriculture and driving transformation as it were, to ensure that there is food security, to ensure that there is connection or synergy between the facility and the National Seed Council and other bodies that are relevant, that are supposed to work very assiduously to ensure that there is food in season and out of season. And new technology, including chemicals and larger tractors, allowed farmers to work larger areas of land with less labor. They are also part of the Industrial Revolution. And those, the government policies encourages farmers most times to scale up their operations. And also those farmers, who are motivated by economies of scale, what happens that of course they would enjoy the economic advantage of producing larger numbers of products. Thank you.
See, this is why I love what you are doing, because you are so brilliant. You are able to really explain this concept, bring it home so that ordinary people can understand it. And this is what we really need to do. It is not really about the grammar, it's about the understanding. Because I believe that African farmers, the African people need to understand the thing really grand level so that they can pick it up and work with it. If we hide the idea inside high grammar, it's going to be difficult for them. They remain only within the academia. That is why I really encourage our academia, people that are working in the academia, to learn how to break it down for the ordinary people. It is crucial, it is fundamental. Thank you so much for that. Now, taking it home to cassava production and, if you like, distribution, how will the fourth industrial revolution help cassava production in a specific way? Help me.
Yeah, thank you for that. Remember, while I was, I think I had mentioned it earlier, how technology has become a game changer and helping to transform and also to drive, the value chains and of course those cassava value chain. Um, yeah. So now, how? What does that tell us from what I had said earlier? There are lots of solutions in line with technology which must happen or which must be inculcated or which must be incorporated depending on the objective of the farmer or of the cassava farmer. For example, we know about water smart agriculture and we know that cassava requires water to grow. And then if we have this type of system, how will it not benefit cassava growers? Not just for cassava growers. Of course, we can engage in intercropping. We can mix up crops in the farm so that no aspect is wasted. And of course, when we even mix crops that are compatible to each other, what happens? The nutrient from the other side will benefit the other, and the nutrient from the other side will benefit. Just like marriage between a husband and a wife. And of course, we were told those days that marriage is the union of two imperfect people, working together to become one, to attain it. So that's what can also happen in that type of system with crops. So when they begin to interact with each other, then of course that can be. But I'm talking about water smart agriculture, which is also an aspect of the fourth industrial revolution, and how this can become relevant for cassava growers. And then there are other aspects, like I had mentioned about artificial intelligence, knowing knowing how the soil requirement, knowing how the environment, studying to understand more on how those crops, those cassava varieties can actually, thrive, can actually get very, for you not to miss out in that plan. Because the whole plan of the farmer is to do what make, to make profit. So cassava technologies um, is being encouraged year in year out, and there's some or association that are that deploy fiber in delivering on uncapped and affordable um, connectivity for enabling Africans to participate in fourth industrial revolution programs was also a very good step. It was a very good step, I'm telling you. And one of the events that held in somewhere in South Africa, you know what happened? In that meeting, they came about and saw that 70% of data consumed in developed nations, we are not doing well with our data. And it's very important for our economies, for leadership to understand that data on cassava, real data, it will help. And even the price data, the price, like the regular prices, it will not just help researchers, it will help the country. It will help us to know where we are. So data on fixed line is even faster, it's even affordable. And we saw that in Senegal. Senegal, which had the highest penetration of fixed lines with rate of 10% of its population. And of course, that followed by Kenya and then Ivory Coast, lingering around 6%, while other nations hover around 2 to 4%. In OECD countries, about 90% of homes have fixed broadband connection. So we are talking about fourth industrial revolution. We need ICT. We need ICT. It's very, very important. It's very relevant. It's very, you know, um, it's very instrumental in pushing transformation to the next level. I'm telling you, ICT, information communication technology, that is a very strong aspect of the fourth industrial revolution. And there are only 8 countries in the whole of Africa where consumers are expected to spend 8% their income. Can you imagine? Permit me to talk about those 8 countries.
Please. We need to hear about them.
Yeah, but South Africa is one of them. Of course, you should know. When I was in, the first time I went to South Africa, the friends I made told me that I have come to the country in Africa that is not like Africa. He said, an African country with a difference. But today we are having the other side. There's so much load shedding in South Africa at the moment. load shedding activities, no lights for so many hours. So how will they still become the African country without a difference? It's becoming like business as usual. What about Botswana? It will interest you that Botswana currency is one of the highest currencies in Africa, Pula. And then what of Namibia? What of Algeria? Algeria, now I'm going south, southern part, I'm sorry, northern, in northern Africa, Algeria. What of Egypt also in northern part of Africa? Because we have 5 countries in North Africa: Libya, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. So we have found Algeria and Egypt there. And then Sudan is also one of them. Yeah. Now, and then Nigeria. But I will not believe this alone about those 8 countries. What about Kenya? I know that lots of people love Kenya right now. Lots of people love to go to Rwanda as well. Lots of people are becoming increasingly interested, especially from Europe and the US, to visit Uganda, to visit Tanzania. Tanzania is a frontline country where you can get avocados in large quantities. Avocado pear, yes. And then Ethiopia as well. Of course, Ethiopia is the center of the African Union, and that's where the leaders rally around from time. And this East Africa has become very important in the scheme of things at the moment. I'm telling you, I am not just saying this out of saying sake. I know these things very well because not just because of the things that we do around there, which is also part of it, but because of the networks. We have a strong network, and we I feel it from within me about East Africa. And whenever I feel it that way, the next morning I will start receiving phone calls, and I will start seeing things in the media about East Africa. Right now, East Africa has picked up very fast, and that's why some of I was talking about data. So when we have data, regular data, we will know what is happening. Information is power, like they say. Information is power. So OECD countries, they spend on average about 1.5% of income for services, which include unlimited and affordable data. So how much is being spent? Now, one of the ways that the International Fund for Africa's Development Institute, how do you even call this organization? IFAD has a plan for Cassava, and they have been boosting and facilitating value chain development programs. It's a very good thing that we are also having them. And yeah, so all that is being done in that line, you will see that their content is populated with aspects of fourth industrial revolution. And some of the projects that we keep developing, we keep asked to develop by ICIPE, by AGRA, by this institute in Kenya, the Climate Change Institute in Kenya, in AFDB, in EU consortium. Most of them has very well fortified documents of and most of those solutions, of course, in ensuring transparency, helps in ensuring traceability, helps to ensure sustainability, helps to ensure um, efficiency in the system.
Now, before I ask you something relating to the demand and supply of cassava and cassava products in Nigeria, I would like to ask you something that I've heard some member of the diaspora ask me about, which relate to where they could possibly go in Africa to farm, to of course to relocate and perhaps restart again. Because like you already said before, there are a lot of people in the diaspora who want to go back to Africa, who want to return home. But most of these people are expert in different field. Most of them are businessmen and businesswomen. They want to invest in Africa. Now, from the point of view of agriculture, or let's say from the point of view of cassava production, which part of Africa would you recommend for somebody who want from an African diaspora who want to relocate and start business agricultural production in Africa?
That's a very tricky question. Very tricky question. This question you asked is the same question that was asked in one of the sessions I was listening in, and I was asked to talk about this thing as well. And it became very dicey for me. I was enjoying listening to others till it fell on me to talk, and it became more difficult because some of the persons were saying, a young guy from Ghana, he said, Ghana is very nice, Ghana is this, Ghana, you know. He was very open and he submitted to Uganda. He said Uganda is the best place because of the peace and all of that, that he enjoys the serenity, the peace. And one of my friends here in the UK as well, he's a Caribbean. He has just, he's in Uganda at the moment and his papers, to come, to become a Uganda citizen, will be out soon. So he's very happy. Can you imagine? He grew up in the UK. He grew up in the UK and he's going back to Uganda to live, and he loves Africa a lot. And so the guy said Uganda is the best place. Now he also said he loves Ghana. And then, of course, when the issue of Nigeria, because Nigeria is also very, I'm also very passionate about Nigeria because Nigeria is the country where I am from. And I I love Nigeria with all my heart. And he said something that touched me. He said that sometimes you don't need to compare Nigeria with any country again because Nigeria is a giant of Africa. And I began to see meaning from his response. I'm telling you, cassava also does well in Ghana. Yes, and we have seen it that in the total production, about 900,000 hectares as as of 2021. And in Ghana, over 70% of farmers engage in cassava production. Can you imagine? Over 70.
That's fantastic.
Yes, and the sector contributes to about 22% of the agriculture GDP. Remember, I had mentioned earlier that among the three most populous crops in Africa, cassava, maize, and rice, cassava still ranks the highest. So, not even yams, not even all of those other crops. We are talking about the three most populous crops of Africa. And now we are talking about Nigeria being the largest producer of cassava in the whole world as of 2019, followed by Congo. where one of my colleagues went for a project. My colleague is a professor of food science, and she has done a lot of works in Cassava, and we were discussing because she's an expert in food science and technology. So we need to, discuss about how what is product development, because product development becomes important now that technology has come in, because technology is setting the pace for product development. Product development follow, has some processes to follow. And of course, in cassava, we have products. So she told me some of those things they did in one of the UN studies that they in the past. Of course, she's older than me, and I have a lot to learn from her. And she said that many things that uh, really inspired me in that line. Because she worked with one of the Fulbright scholars in my university where I work, and the Fulbright scholar, incidentally, was is a professor in emeritus and was the vice chancellor of our university. So we have this um, will I call it privilege to rub minds and drink from such a respectable man. Yeah. Anyway, that's by the way. So, and funny enough, the man is also a nutritionist. Yeah. So, and then after Nigeria, I mentioned Democratic Republic of Congo, and then Thailand. And Thailand is in Southeast Asia, and I've been to Southeast Asia before. Those guys are something else. Asian tigers, the Asians, they have a lot. They are really, really. But I know that we are also working hard, Africans, to see that we will become what statistics has projected that by the year 2050, what will happen Africa will feed the whole world. And several countries produced over 30 billion pounds of cassava. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, and I didn't even mention about the two types of cassava, which most people, like last week when the FABCO people in South Africa confronted me, and I was discussing with them, and they said, um, people have been saying cassava is a bad crop, it's so deadly. Many, they've been saying it all over. And, they have expressed their bias against cassava that it's not this, it's not that. And I had to just listen to them to finish talking. And after they finished talking, because there were two of them, I told them that actually, I grew up planting cassava and harvesting cassava. And that I was warned as a child by my parents that I shouldn't touch cassava with my mouth except it is fermented. So we all knew it is a culture. You wait for it to ferment. And that type of cassava is known as bitter cassava. It's not like the one that grows in South Africa. That one that grows is sweet cassava. You can cook it and eat it without, And we have had cases where people have eaten cassava that are not, that is not fermented, and the hydrocyanic acid content, the cyanide content, is deadly. So we are advised to allow it to ferment. While I was a student at the University of Nigeria, one of the medical students who was studying, he was also in his first year, like myself. While we were students, he died. And his
Of what?
wife,
Of cassava?
I'm not saying that, wait for me to learn first.
Oh, sorry.
No, I
Okay.
wasn't. No, I wasn't about to say of cassava, but you know, it was information reached us that actually he fasted. He did, he engaged in. Fasting. I don't know whether it was with prayer, and I don't know whether it was actually fasting. Maybe it was, the what we used to practice while we were students. Sometimes we don't eat in the morning, we don't eat in the afternoon, and then we eat in the night. So maybe that was the fasting that he did. I don't know, but he actually, went to one of the restaurants and he ate um, that with soup, and maybe all other people had eaten it and they're leaving. Maybe because they had, done the foundation of their, of their stomach with with food, because we need to be careful with what we put in the mouth when you want to um, eat for like breakfast. If you want to eat breakfast, there are foods that of course you have to obey that law, the law of nutrition, and then you now keep taking it gradually. Gradually, you have to take a lot of water and fruits and green vegetables, not just green vegetables is very good. All the vegetables are good, but green vegetables is very good. And like anyway, that's by the way. So why we need to draw a line between the two cassava, right? Or the two cassava types. And then before we now start talking about the varieties of cassava. And yeah, I had mentioned about one of the, in fact, all of derivatives from cassava product, they are all good. Even biscuits are derivatives. We have bread. All any product that flour can produce or manufacture, cassava flour can be used in it. So that's why I said that cassava can actually supplement for wheat. And when we were invited by Nancy online, well, sometime last year, when the Russia-Ukraine crisis was, fresh, uh, you know, he invited even Professor Sambo from University, and we were all in that section. And I even learned a new thing that day, you know, and at the very end, we saw that cassava, cassava is a very good product that can supplement for wheat. And there are some ways also to fortify those products, fortify them with the right nutrients, fortify them enough so that when you consume them, they can also give you that nutrient requirement needed for the consumer. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That is really quite elaborate and very interesting. I appreciate that. I really do. Now, I want you to tell me something about the relationship between cassava production in Nigeria and the demand for cassava. Are we producing enough? Do we lack certain capacity in terms of like when the people are the production able to meet the demand? Tell me something about that.
Um, the demand being I know where you are going because that was what Nancy was asking me I think 2 years ago. Permit me to say that the demand could be high. Sorry, the demand is always high. Yes, the demand is always high. The supply cannot be high like the demand. Yeah. So permit me to say that the, the supply is not commensurate to the demand. demand for cassava and all its derivatives is high. Yes, it's high. And however, the supply has been unable to meet up with the huge demand. And when you look at the supply demand gap for high cassava flour, it stands about over 400,000 metric tons per annum. While the gap,
That's a lot.
I'm telling you, I'm just telling you,
That's a lot.
while the gap for cassava stock is about 290,000 metric. So, and this is high time. When you look at the price, the market price. First of all, you look at how much is 1 ton of cassava in Nigeria. You need to factor in the market price, first of all, which should be between 7,000 to 10,000 naira a ton. And as I'm telling you, is even see the price keeps going higher and higher every day. It's sometimes it fluctuates, goes up, it comes up. So and depend on the season because these crops are seasonal. We must understand that you know well when it comes to agriculture, season becomes important. Perishability becomes also important. So that is just that. So I have already said it that the demand is high and it can never go low because it's needed. It's needed for industry. Many industries need it. Remember that the agriculture sector is a primary sector, is a real sector and is traditional sector, and every other sector depends on it. So every aspect, the demand on the agriculture sector is always I need. It's very, very needed. All the time, the need is so high. We have not even talked about forestry, agroforestry. We have not even talked about the fisheries. There's the aquatic. And then we are just scratching up on cassava, which is a root crop.
Which means there is a lot of potential in Nigeria to be specific. Of course, we can expand it to other parts of Africa because, we have said it again before that because the population of Africa is the youngest in the world in terms of demography, we really do not have any reason to not be able to feed the world, but first of all, feed ourselves. So that the idea of US aid, food aid to Africa really doesn't make any sense today because we have the population, we have the fertile land, we should actually have the logistics also because the farm can be cultivated near the people. There is really no rational reason why we should not be able to feed ourselves and feed the hungry people in the world. All right, maybe this will take us to another question I already have in my mind where you were explaining it before, which is the use of AI. We are talking of the fourth industrial revolution and cassava production. Now, where do you see the role of AI in cassava production in Africa or in Nigeria to be specific?
Yeah. Um, AI is, like it's born out of intelligence, artificial intelligence, not the natural intelligence. So it works with machines, and structured in such a way that, like, it's one of the aspects of the fourth industrial revolution. And researchers, that's why researchers are very important. They have developed AI enabling devices, which are capable of identifying cassava in plants. Sorry, for identifying disease in plants. Of course, that also tells us that those devices can also, identified diseases in cassava because cassava is a plant. Specifically, we know cassava. Sorry about that. Cassava is most widely grown root in the planet and a decent source for carbohydrates. I had said this earlier, and it's annotated thousands of cassava plant images, identified and also classified diseases to train uh, a machine learning model using what we call TensorFlow in doing that. So what it does is that it takes AI takes root and helping farmers to identify diseases in those plants. And I was discussing with my childhood friend who is a geologist. He has just found himself in the agriculture space. And I was smiling. I said, those days while we were growing up at the university community, where we were neighbors, I was always telling him about agriculture. And I think he wanted to study medicine also. But myself, I stuck in on agriculture because, um, that was where I found my love and my passion. Everything was just driven to that. So I ventured in there. So he was telling me how his explanation was top notch. He was telling me what AI does. So when he was saying it, he didn't mention AI, but I already had that knowledge that it was AI he was talking about. He was telling me that their devices can monitor how water goes up every day. That's how plants can absorb water from soil and how, and all of that. And, what they require from the soil and how the nutrients and all of that. So that's what artificial intelligence does. And interestingly, he's in Congo. He's in Congo because Congo is like, of course, it's they grow cassava a lot there. I'm not talking of, because Congo Brazzaville is different from Democratic Republic. Yes. So, and then, yeah, so developing AI tools is also used in reducing the spread of those diseases. So the tools can be able to help them. Now, it can also help. I had mentioned this before, soil monitoring. It can also help in um, insect and plant disease detection. And of course, in life, it can also help spray, intelligent spray, and it helps weeding as well. That is automatic weeding and aerial survey and imaging and all of that. So yeah, so I can tell that the future of AI in agriculture is very bright.
Looking at the application of the modern technology, which of course we are going to be using in the fourth industrial revolution, I'm interested in the know-how because you are going to be maneuvering the machine and to do the work. In fact, that is why it is actually fascinating in that from while you are sitting down, you are able to command machine to do a certain work that you used to do. I remember when I was much smaller, I was in Nigeria in Uromi then. So we used to go to the farm. These are very far place from where we live. So we have to trek several kilometers on foot to go there, to till the ground, to clear the weed, or to harvest. We will work for several hours and then trek down home for hours before you will get home. They prepare the food and eat. Now, with the use of technology, you can do all that. You don't need to be walking several kilometers of hour before you can do the work. You don't need to sweat. You can just be in the office and do the work. And of course, you need to know how to do the work, to maneuver the machines. What do you want to talk about that relating to the African farmers, the Nigerian farmer? How much are they prepared? or how much should they be prepared for the fourth industrial revolution?
That takes us to the concept of brain re-engineering and reimagination, which is a strategy for youth engagement in building their entrepreneurship capacity. And that's the whole concept that I developed, which I told you that came about out of deep thoughts and inspiration I got while I was being interviewed by Dick Vierman, the founder of Foodlog. And I think the youths, the role of youths cannot be overemphasized. The importance of the role of youths in driving transformation in the agriculture sector, even in this cassava thing, cannot be overemphasized. I I reckon there are lots of medical doctors, lots of engineers, lots of pharmacists, lots of lawyers, lots of professionals are coming back to agriculture. And most of them are, when you look at them, some of them are, majority of them are within the youthful age. Some are even retired, like one of the consultant professors in one of the institutions approached me the other day. And that's his father was my father's classmate. Those good old days, but my father um, had us late, but the gentle retired professor, the gentleman, of course, he's over 70 years. He loves agriculture and he wants to come back to agriculture because he can't imagine that, of course, those days they were very traditional. They were very, their um, family farming was still being, was still being encouraged. It was, the thing. Yeah. So coming back to your question about manipulating machines and all of that, I think that's your question, right?
Yeah, yeah. They know how to train the farmers so they can
Okay.
apply
Yeah.
machine. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very important that um, there's um, a system, a strategy, which I had mentioned. It must be done. It must be done. And, we have the extension and advisory services. We also have training um, programs. We have what we are developing, myself and my friend in Kenya, and some other people, we are developing a digitized type of solution for African farmers in training them, in building their capacities, even in the telecommunications as well. And so that they can easily use their phones to use those devices, and even gamification as well. And a friend of mine and a colleague in the US, he's about doing his PhD. He's in Purdue University, and he's on animations, and we are been thinking about doing that type of solution for University of Rwanda, where he finished from, and where I also have people who um, are friendly with what I do. So, and we discuss about all of those activities around for the Eastern African region. And the other day, I had a meeting with one of my friends who came. She's American and she came to Nigeria to establish something. And later on, she moved to Tanzania and she's doing quite pretty well because she has found herself in the agriculture space. And there's so much happening in East Africa now. And I really wish to give kudos because it's whenever something is happening in the East, you can imagine, because the East is always a powerful region, right from the Bible times, right from the times.
Amen.
of the beginnings. And yeah, so anyway, every part of, I'm just, trying to crack a joke, but I know that these things also can play out in, transformation process. So we need to have a plan for the farmers. And that's part of the program Dr. Beatrice Bishop and myself, she developed, the PETS foreign policy ecosystem, which, PET stands for policy, economy, technology, and society. And the PETS program, in line with agriculture, was populated by myself, because in line with the fourth industrial revolution, because we saw that as a solution for African farmers, and African farmers who are who can actually attend school again, who can enroll in a formalized type of training, can be part of that certificate training. And we have a lot of trainers from developed countries, so they can do that on virtual. So we are looking for universities at the moment. We are working with Kavala International University. We are also trying to work with University of Rwanda. We are also trying to work with some other universities. And Raphael, this young man, Raphael Shams, he's an expert on circular economy. And he has very good content on circular economy model. The young man is doing amazingly well. He's very young. I won't say his age,
It's
but the guy,
okay.
oh my God, the guy is something else. He's an Austrian, but he has been able to develop courses that these students, farmers and learners can actually go on. And you learn, you put your head down, and you will inculcate a lot.
Can we apply those one in Africa and in Nigeria? That knowledge that you are tapping from there?
Absolutely. It's actually meant for Africa. And he actually told me, because I had to interrogate him. Trust me, I used all my energies to interrogate him a lot about issues about, Africa and Europe and everything. And I had to do that because he seems to be very happy with.
Maybe we bring it to the conversation here to pick his brain on it so he can explain what he's doing. Because we need all the knowledge to be available to the people. Please go ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. We can even feature together, and
That will be interesting.
you will hear him out, and I will just be there and be listening in. And when he says the one, because he's quite young, and I was, I was trying to find out if he really loves Africa, because before I can endorse you, um, coming from Europe to Africa, I really have to ascertain whether you really love Africa, because otherwise the Africans will not take it easy. And I understood that the young man loves Africa, and I said, okay, let's keep moving, and let me keep, because there are lots of these young people in Africa who are actually asking me to mentor them. Last year, I received an award as the global. We were how many? We were we were about 10, or not even up to 10. We were singled out as the global mentor of change. So
Yes, lovely. Congratulations, brother. Congratulations.
thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
So that's what we are doing, to at least at that level, to see how we can put two and three together, one and two together, four and five together, and all of that. Yeah. Well, why I said that was because we need to be very careful when we are recommending people. It's part of the global leader thing that I keep saying, that things are supposed to happen with peace and with order. We have to do things in a very respectable manner. Nobody is an island of its own. Nobody is more superior than the other. Nobody is more inferior than the other. I am a promoter of that type of life. And I am also a Pan Africanist. And that is what I stand for. But I am not part of those who are in the wrong. I choose not to be. And even in this fourth industrial revolution and the cassava and manipulating all those devices, we need to, like I said, in the facility where I was, when I signed papers with the IOM of the UN, I wasn't sent there to go and waste my time. I was sent there for a serious business, and I went there and I found out that many of the many of the staff of the facility, they are not being trained well. So we need to come up with a formidable solution, a formidable strategy to be deployed in reaching out to them very well, so that the nobody will be left out, especially in that type of facility. And we can't even talk about bringing in, some of those gadgets are so expensive that it's not still popular in Africa. It's not popular at all as at now.
But do we really have the resources to be able to use assuming they are brought to places like, I don't know, it can be in Benin or in Kaduna or part of Lagos for cultivation of crop? Do we have the power to be able to make them work? Because they need energy, a lot of energy.
They need energy, and you are even saying energy. The energy that they need is power, and of course, which is a challenge. Power. Okay, we are now talking of renewable and clean energy solution. Can it really power them? Sustainably? Can it really power them without issues surrounding insecurity? Can we really power them? You know, yeah. So we need to really ask ourselves the question: if really this can actually happen, because I have seen people who bring a lot of some of these solutions, and they come, and they don't even stay. They run away. I know of an American who came. He wished he had come to Nigeria, but he stayed back in Benin Republic, and he stayed for a while. And what he came for was not working, and he ran back to the US with his family. And we kept laughing at him and saying, "Oh, I thought he said he was coming to Africa to stay." So, but lots of people who have also navigated and withstood all the vicissitudes of life, and they are able, even in the face of load shedding, in the face of no power, in the face of no energy, in the face of insecurity, they still love to be around. That that type of gods, that, yeah, must be commended. I'm telling you. Yeah. So
All right. Now, to conclude the conversation, actually about the conclusion, now, what would you say to young Nigeria, young Africans, of the reason why they should invest in agricultural production, to be specific, cassava production? If we have spoken up to this point about cassava, why would they spend their time investing on cassava?
the young people, I will encourage them, seriously to venture into cassava. Cassava growing, well, it depends on the aspect of cassava. where they want, where their interest really lies. But I know some of them want to make money fast, so they need to sit back and know where the money making side is, because I know that's what they want. And some of them are very, the youths are very impatient, and agriculture requires a lot of patience. And I know they may want to be more prominent from after harvest, because after harvest, that is when they can run. They can run with the products. They can run with with cassava itself in processing it to be this, and then they can now say, and they need to find the off takers. They need to identify their markets very well, so they can be very um, instrumental around the marketing side, and also be instrumental in driving the technology for production as well, because our youths, they love to see a more scientific and technologically driven agriculture. And that is where my concept also touched on, um, because if the the perception problem with the youths of Africa, or with generally youths, not just in Africa, it's everywhere. I'm telling you, even in Europe, in the UK, there are programs on how to bring back the youths back to agriculture. So, of course, that's different from our own somehow, because they are in the developed, while we are in the developing. So, there are ways that must be followed up. So yeah. So, but they know the importance of food. Um, yeah, they know the importance of food, and its relevance. Its relevance in society, and of course, we know that that same cassava, that same cassava is needed by industry. Youths can make millions of naira from cassava. I'm telling you, and we have data, data that has been shared on how the youths have made a lot of money, and how it's a veritable um, crop for them to overcome poverty. And we know that the largest portion or category of Nigeria's population is our youths. So, and gender and youth economic opportunity in Nigeria's cassava is really um, important. And like I said, studies have been carried out, and we have looked at some of those studies, and we've seen that, yeah, cassava is a stable crop, and we have seen also that the youths have a lot to gain. They have a lot to gain from that crop compared to other crops. I'm telling you, because it's already flying, and the young people in the country, most times, they have been advised, even before this decade. In the last 2 decades, they have been advised to take advantage of cassava as a high economic crop to support, the country's efforts. But sadly, it's still some youths are coming in while some others are not. So that perception problem is deeply rooted. And Nigeria is the world's largest cassava producer, and it's playing a very huge role in revolutionizing um, the economy. So it's playing a whole lot of role in revolution, in a revolution of some sort, or to some sort. Yeah. So cassava is a shrubby crop, is dirty crop, is this, is this, that when you harvest it, you have to wash it, it takes some processes.
Of course, everything takes some process. If you need to succeed, there is a process. You don't just jump into it. And with all the opportunity, possibility, and potentials surrounding cassava, with everything you can do with it, it should power an economy by itself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So I think those who have the possibility, those who can invest, those who want to make money, can really consider cassava as a potential area of investment because there are a lot of things that you can do with it. So I really want to thank you so much, Dr. Ikechi. I really enjoyed the conversation. The value you added here are incredible. Thank you very much for that. And of course, we are coming back again. That thing you were talking about just now, we are ready for it. That's your new program. And of course, cassava is not the only thing we are going to be talking about here because we really are looking into the possibility where we should be able to benefit from the resources that is available in our land. And that includes also agriculture. Because we don't need to rely only on petroleum. Petroleum, like I often say here, cannot make Nigeria rich. It can make few people rich because it's only one source material. It cannot really make the people rich. But something like cassava, yam, like the other part of the natural resources can make the people rich because you can then decide to carve out your own. You can be in Kaduna and cultivate and be part of the agricultural sector. You can be in Benin and be part of it. But you cannot be in Benin and be part of of petroleum. You need to be in the grid. And it's not open to everybody. But agriculture is open to everybody. That is why we need to look at it as alternative to this mono economy that we have in the system. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening and talk to you in the next episode.